All right, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are live. And our topic today is the state of the Black man in America. The state of the Black man in America. And I want to go. First, well, before I get to any of the displays that we're going to go over, Doc, how would you sum up the state of the Black man in America?
You know, that's a question that is impossible to ask. I mean, impossible to answer. Because quite simply, you're dealing with a situation where Black men, just like Black women, are not a monolithic population. We have some of us who are, reaching the stars, reaching higher landings, as Langston Hughes talks about in his poem Mother to Son. And then we have some who are mired in a life that I would argue is not worth living, that are dealing with homelessness, they're dealing with some element of parental alienation in regards to their children, divorces. It's a whole litany of things, spiritual challenges, health challenges, mental health challenges as well, that many Black men are going through. So to begin to talk about what is the state of Black men, there is no standard answer to that, because there is no standard Black male experience, to be absolutely brutally honest with you. So it's kind of difficult to answer that. But if we're talking about the majority, I would say that it's still a grind for the average brother. Because we're talking about Black men earning on average around $50,000 a year, and that presents a host of challenges that are going to be multiplied when you're dealing in a capitalist nation. And I yield, brother.
Okay. So you're even with that being said, are you saying that there's no way to really tap in and know that what Black men are actually feeling and dealing with?
No. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that it'd be a little disingenuous to try and represent all Black men on one statement of what their state is. Now, if we want to talk about the majority of them, we can talk about that. But even in talking about the majority, we're going to miss some of these some Black men and what their experiences are, because you got to remember, we just, if you were to look at education, we vacillate between no degree all the way up to PhD. So we can talk about the average, the median of let's say earnings, what we're looking at as far as life expectancy, what we're looking at as far as marriage and things like that. That's quantifiable data that we can look at and we can talk about.
But you don't think that even if you have a rich, a middle class, and a poor Black man, that when they're dealing with everyday life in America, that they all don't share some of the same situations dealing with racism?
I would hesitate to use the word all. I would, especially when you're talking about racism, I would use the term the vast majority. But just like I do, that we come across some brothers who don't believe racism even exists. And so that's why, I hedge to say all, but the vast majority. We can talk about the majority of people, but even in talking about the majority, we're going to miss some experiences. Like any discussion that we have is not going to reflect the viewpoints of, let's say, Clarence Thomas, who's the brother that Jesse Lee Peterson. We have some outliers even in talking about the vast majority.
But even so, I would contend that all Black men, regardless of status, regardless of their mental condition, have faced racism at some point in their lives. And
See,
still,
I agree with you. I agree with what you just said. But when you're talking about how they experience the world and what their worldview is, many of them will deny that to this very moment. It was the brother who wrote "Member of the Club," our kind of people. Lawrence Otis Graham. He's a brother that would, by and large, deny racism, and then at the same time would admit that he has been a victim of racism. Yet at the same time would trust that viewpoint with the idea that you could out respectability politic your way out of any of the damages that come from racism.
yeah, and I think that would be just their stupidity
Yeah,
or their
I agree with
foolishness,
that. I
you
agree with
know.
that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Let me real quick. I want to welcome Mac 285 to the program. Peace and blessings, brother Mac, and welcome Twin Pyramid to the program. Peace and blessings, Twin. Glad to see y'all black men up here in the house.
Welcome.
Definitely, definitely. In doing a little research, Doc, for this program, did you know that there's a commission set up on the status of black men and boys?
Yeah. Yeah.
You are aware of that?
Yeah. There's quite a few of those like government programs and committees and people doing working papers and things like that. Yeah, I actually met at a conference a brother who was the head of one of these government commissions and what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the commission right here, the United States
Hmm.
Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and
Hmm.
Boys.
Hmm.
And I was shocked to learn about it because I've never heard about it before.
Hmm.
Um, and just looking through the different aspects, civil rights, criminal
Hmm.
justice, education, health and housing, labor and employment. And you see their chair, um, House of Representative Wilson. Here's a short video. We're not going to play the whole thing, but just a part of it so everybody can see.
To the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. As we gather here today on the 22nd day of Black History Month, we stand united in our purpose and unwavering commitment to the health and well-being of Black men and boys. It is a privilege to convene with such distinguished individuals, each member bringing a wealth of knowledge, experience, and dedication to our collective endeavor. Today's meeting marks not just another entry in our calendars, but a significant opportunity to reflect, strategize, and mobilize towards addressing the systemic challenges and disparities that Black men and boys face daily. Our mission is clear in its intent to dismantle the barriers of inequality, to elevate the voices that have been marginalized, and to forge a path toward justice and equity. In the spirit of collaboration and shared vision, we combine our efforts, learn from one another, and leverage our diverse perspectives in pursuit of actionable solutions. As we proceed with today's agenda, let us do so with a complete understanding of the weight of our responsibility. The work we undertake is not just for the present, but for generations that will follow. We are here to lay the foundation for a future where every Black man and boy can achieve their potential, unencumbered by the biases and barriers that have historically impeded their progress. The path ahead is going to be challenging, but this room's collective expertise and passion give me great confidence in our capacity to make meaningful progress. As we embark on today's proceedings, I invite you to bring your whole selves to the table. Your insights, your experiences, your dedication, all are invaluable to the success of our mission. Together, we have the power to affect transformative change and to contribute to a society that genuinely values and uplifts all of its members. Let us begin our meeting with purpose, with determination, and hope for the future that we are committed to building. I will now ask the director to call the quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Per the statute, which at present a quorum consists of 9 members, or the majority of the members of the commission, each of those 9 members do constitute a quorum. To establish this quorum, I will call each member by name, and please note your presence by saying here. Start with Chairwoman Wilson.
Here.
Secretary Sharpton. Commissioner Horsford. Commissioner Carter Sr. Commissioner Frost.
He's here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner McBath. And Madam Chair, Commissioner McBath sent us previous word that because of a conflict, he would not be present, but we have her proxy. Commissioner Hank Johnson. Commissioner Brewer.
I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Elder.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Hackett.
Here.
Thank you, madam. Commissioner Calvin Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Palm.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Holmes. And Commissioner Colclaw.
Here.
Thank you, sir. For the record, please note that, Madam Chair, I believe we've achieved a quorum of the commissioners who are present, and I will turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Director Spencer. I now
Congresswoman, I'm present.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Sharp.
welcome Commissioner Sharpton. You're in a car traveling,
Yep.
but you made it.
Yeah, well, when the High Commissioner tells me to, High Commissioner Wilson, I had to be at the meeting. I'm at the meeting.
Okay. We
Thanks, sir.
appreciate your attendance. Thank you so much. Now that the agenda is adopted, I'm now moved to approve the minutes from our previous meeting, which are included in your commissioner's packet. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Now, I would like to introduce the newest member of the commission, Mr. Joseph Palm. Is Mr. Palm here?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Commissioner.
That's you with the Black History Month background. I love it.
Yes, ma'am.
Right in tune. We love it, love it. You come to the right commission. Mr. Joseph Palm was appointed by President Biden as the Regional Director of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Regions 7 and 2, covering a vast area from Missouri to New York, and including territories like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Joseph Palm to share his insights with us. Mr. Palm, we'd like for you to say a few words.
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman and Commission. I'm just thankful to God to be able to serve in this position. I'm thankful to President Biden and Secretary Javier Becerra, and I'll do all I can to be helpful as a commissioner. Thank you. Peace and love, and God bless you.
So, Mr. Palm, well, we call ourselves commissioners. So you are now Commissioner Palm. Okay. So we will expect you to carry the weight of the Health and Human Services Agency and keep us on the right path for health inequities and disparities that we know exist with Black men and boys. We've had several briefings with Howard University and different agencies that are interested in healthcare. So we would expect that you would be present and accounted for when we plan those briefings and bring the weight of your office and all of the expertise of your office into the planning. We welcome you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Because we have some new commissioners other than Commissioner Palm, I'm going to review the commission rules. Members are expected to attend all commission meetings. In the case of an absence, members are expected to report to the chair before the meeting. Members will still be responsible for fulfilling prior commitments regardless of attendance status. If a member is absent twice in a given year, they will be reviewed by the chair and the appointing authority, and further action will be considered, including removal and replacement on the commission. Do you have any questions, concerns? Okay. The White House is hosting a celebration of Black men and boys tomorrow. As the chair of the commission, I have been invited, and I will be providing opening remarks at this event. Joining the meeting represents a continued and increasing dialogue. We're trying to set up a dialogue with the White House and the commission about the social status of Black men and boys. So let's hope that this is the beginning of a dialogue with the White House about Black men and boys. It has not been successful so far. We have a commission, and we want the nation to know that we have a commission. And we think if that particular achievement was heralded by the White House, people would know. Black men would know. Black boys would know. Black mothers would know. Black families would know. And they would appreciate the fact that there is a commission that cares about them and their disparities and their troubles in the United States of America. And this commission is not just about criminal justice. This commission is about prevention. How do we prevent Black men and boys from entering the criminal justice system? So these are some of the issues that I hope to convey tomorrow at the White House when I attend the briefing that they're having. And as the chair of the commission, I'm going to declare 2024 as the year of Black men and boys. And I'm going to make this announcement at the White House tomorrow. I know 2024 will be the year of Black men and boys because it is imperative that in our 4th year of existence, we come together to address the issues of this group. The time is now. And I'm going to share with you several events for this year that we have planned for Black men and boys that all of you, we hope, will be a part of. After the February event at the White House, in March, I'm going to ask every member in Congress but specifically members of the Congressional Black Caucus, to hold an event in their district on preventing crime in the Black community. Also in March, we will hold a special order hour on live TV, C-SPAN, where the commission's congressional members will take to the floor of Congress to talk about issues and the importance of Black men and boys. We have had several briefings, but they have all been just generated on whatever media we could get to come to these briefings. And many of you could not come to the briefings. So special orders are on C-SPAN. Also, when we have our events in our cities preventing crime in the Black community, all of our commissioners, regardless of where you work, who you are, we're asking that if it's just a social media post, if it's something that you work with your local county commission or your local police officers or local youth group or a prison, a jail, but on the same day, the exact day that we set, we're going to ask you to host something in your city on how this commission is elevating Black men and boys. Now, Mr. Elder, I know you like to talk about fathers. So we're going to look for you to set up something in California talking about fathers. Mr. Brewer, you like to talk about fathers, and you also talk about prevention. So in Florida, we're going to be looking to you for that. Commissioner Frost is on, and we'll be looking to him to elevate the gun violence that he has been so prominent in. We're so pleased that we have Commissioner Sharpton on with us, and hopefully in New York or Washington or wherever he is, he will host something on preventing crime in the Black community as it relates to Black men and boys.
Okay, so that's a real brief, but I wanted you all to be able to see for yourself who's on the commission, what is the commission about. Go to the website and check it out. I will be getting with Representative Wilson, because what I see from the commissioners is, a bunch of old folk. A bunch of old folk that don't really have the steam to push what needs to be pushed. And so I would like some of us that's Black First to get on that commission. So I'm going to reach out to her and see when is, some of these commissioner terms are up. And then some of us are going to step up to be commissioners. One of the interesting things that I see about this was set up in 2020, and being set up in 2020. And as you heard her say, Biden don't even give them the time of day. But it was President Trump who gave it the okay. It was President Trump that signed off on it. The Democrats in the House approved it, and every Republican in the Senate approved it as well. So, but it's not getting any real push off. It's been up since 2020, and accomplishments are not that great. And that's a problem. And I would have expected, since you have a Democratic president, that he would be more engaged in this. But as you heard Wilson say, he's not. He hadn't even given them the time of day. but the website goes in and tell you their what their mission is. The U.S. Commission on Social Status of Black Men and Boys is the culmination of my work as a U.S. Congresswoman to empower our Black men and boys. I authored Bill H.R. 1636, the Commission on Social Status of Black Men and Boys Act, which passed overwhelmingly in the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives in July 2020 and unanimously in the Republican-controlled Senate before being signed into law by President Donald Trump. Doc, what's your thoughts of this? And I know you said you already heard about it, but what's your thoughts so far?
This wasn't the the commission that the guy I knew ran. Our interaction was probably 10, 15 years ago. And I want to say for sure that what he was doing was actually generated out of the Obama administration during that time. My thoughts about the commission, I mean, like I said, there are plenty of these commissions, and what ultimately ends up happening is they accomplish very little. They do very little. It wouldn't be. I mean, you think about how immersed you are in the issue of race in America, and you didn't even know about this commission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have that part of it where it really, at this point for me, I just look at it as, oh, okay, they got another commission. You know, another way for them to siphon money, throw a little program here and there, and accomplish basically next to nothing. You know, my curiosity is piqued when you see Reverend Al Sharpton there, and also Larry Elder there at the exact same time.
Exactly.
So those are kind of major red flags for me in regards to what it is, and you're in many ways. How can I put this? I think that these types of endeavors have far too often been generated without a realistic ultimate goal. They really are not seeking to do anything that they're very clear on. You'll find them being very general, very non-descriptive. You know, I want you to do something on gun violence. I want you to do something on Black fathers. I want you to do, you know, and those are all, you know, it almost feels as if she's pulling them, shooting from the hip in regards to this. And I think that I know that our people deserve so much better than that. So by and large, it's a federal initiative that they're probably going to throw a lot of money behind, or attempt to throw a lot of money behind. They're going to probably have very little impact because, as you know, even within this political season, you know what's the great saying? Think nationally, but act locally. So these are grassroots issues that need to be addressed, and having a day in the park with speakers is going to have a negligible effect upon the status of Black boys and Black men whose problems are up close and personal, you know, pressing, that they're dealing with on a daily basis.
Definitely. I want to go ahead and welcome Discussions with Dean. Peace and blessings, Queen. We're glad you're here. Welcome Sheila Neal as well. Peace and blessings, Queen. We're glad that y'all are here with us today, discussing the state of Black men in America. You know, I think that most people probably would not have thought that Donald Trump would have signed anything like this into law. And then also probably wouldn't have thought that President Joe Biden would have ignored them. But that's that politic thing that goes either way that the wind does.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when you begin to talk about, and we can deal with Trump first and foremost, you're dealing with a situation where there's so much that's been said about him. There's so much that we've seen. There's so much that we've heard, and people have their own feelings about him. It is not beyond realistic that he was playing the long game, and they understood early on what an outreach to black men, or some type of commission for black men. If nothing else, it would look good on the resume. Okay. Now, in regards to Biden, there's nothing about that him not being responsive to them, and what have you, that is surprising to me. We have to remember that it's Joe Biden under the and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm so far left that I can touch the right at times, and so I vacillate based upon the issue. But you got to remember, during the Clinton administration, it was Joe Biden's, and he used to refer to himself as this Joe Crime Bill Biden. He created that three strikes law that really led to the warehousing of black men. And it's something that we don't talk about. We also don't talk about the role that the so-called Congressional Black Caucus had in the creation of that crime bill. They, in many ways, begged for the incarceration and sweeping of the streets of black men because of crack cocaine, and the ultra violent wars that we were seeing, and the deaths that we were seeing within our community. And I still remember the argument. The argument was quite simply that if crack was doing in the white community what it's doing in black America, the government would do something. And lo and behold, they put Joe Biden on the case, and he created a draconian crime bill that I would argue we're still not only feeling the impact of it, but we haven't recovered from its impact and its effects upon Black America. We lost at least 2 generations of Black children who were raised in homes without fathers. That can be directly attributed to that. And then, of course, we can have the conversations about labor, about economics, and things like that that have been ongoing for Black men in particular. I yield that.
So, Doc, well, let me ask you this then. At what point did, and I guess I shouldn't say it like this, but I don't know another way of putting it. At what point did the Democratic Party turn their backs on Black people? At what point did the Democratic Party actually start to turn against the progressive movements that Black people wanted or needed?
Well, I mean, you have to remember that there's a direct correlation between social strife, economic suffering, and xenophobia, the hatred and fear of strangers. And when you're talking about in the era that you would have to look at is the most tumultuous one that we've seen during what historians refer to as the American century, and it is quite simply the 1960s. The 1960s is rife with urban rebellions. It's rife with the rise of social movements that are aimed at overthrowing what is commonly referred to as the status quo. And I always I make the status quo analogous to a soccer mom. These people are frightened and afraid during the 1960s. And JFK, and we should have a very good discussion about that period, or really the two moments where Black America abandons the Republican Party roots. And we, of course, had the Southern campaign that happens during during FDR's administration and going forward, because FDR is a different type of Democrat from what we're seeing with Southern-based Democrats who eventually become Dixiecrats, and then they are repackaged and refashioned as Republicans. But to answer that question, I would pinpoint that the national mood has shifted against Black folk by the late 1960s. You have to remember that JFK is killed. Um, then you're gonna have Malcolm killed. Okay, we're talking about the mid 60s, and you have JFK's VP, Lyndon Baines Johnson. LBJ comes in, and LBJ shocks a lot of people because LBJ is a Texan. And there's a lot of things that come along with being a Texan. But it's LBJ that's going to give us the 64 Civil Rights Act and the 65 Voting Rights Act. And his administration is going to be followed by Nixon. And there's this the nation's wore out from feminism, from womanism, from Black power, from anti-Vietnam, all of these protests that are going on. And so you're seeing a question that I would argue is ever present when you look at Black folk. And it is quite simply, it's the same question that the Republican Party asked during the ending of American Reconstruction, and it is quite simply, how much is enough? When have we given enough for Black folk that they can stand up on their own? So by Nixon's administration, 68 going forward for the relatively short time he was in there, we're looking at a shift in the American people and a shift in the in presidential politics of how they're going to deal with race. And Nixon begins to advance something known as benign neglect. Okay, and we're dealing with Daniel Patrick Moynihan's ascension. And the idea of benign neglect is neglecting you for your own good. So they're going to curtail social services. They're going to curtail a lot of these things that were supplementing Black life. We have to remember that that Black civil rights leaders, the moderate civil rights leaders, they made a strategic error, and they in many ways integrated themselves out of any semblance of economic or business power. You know, there's a great film called has Terrence Howard in it, Lackawanna Blues. And at the end of Lackawanna Blues, you have Hill Harper walking down the street. He's the adult version of the child that Lackawanna Blues is based upon. And the story surrounds this young Black boy from a disassembled family, but he's going to be raised by a very admirable assembled community in a rooming house. It's a fantastic true story, actually. But Hill Harper's character is walking down the street, and this is now 1970s. It's set up in Lackawanna, New York. And Hill Harper's character says, one of the things we didn't realize when we were talking about integration, we didn't understand that every time a white door opened, a Black one closed. And so now you've given away your ability to employ yourself, and you're almost wholly and solely dependent upon what can only be, if you read the historical record, what can only be considered a hostile community that doesn't want to hire you. And so you couple that with a struggling economy, and people begin to ask, and they say it to this day, you know, when are Black folk gonna stand up for themselves? When are y'all going to become, you know, economically viable? So you're seeing that shift, and politicians always follow what is the mood of the masses. During the mid and 1960s, American whites become in many ways angered. The hippies that we saw, hell, they go get haircuts and go get jobs in corporate America. Okay. And we constantly talk about the government coming in and in every way creating these very interesting public assistance rules. That if you got public assistance, a man couldn't be within the household. And those of us who grew up in the 70s, we can tell you stories of the government coming in, some government agency, police, or what have you, and raiding a black woman's house looking for the clothes of a black man. So you're seeing a fracturing of the black family on the one hand, and at the exact same time, you're seeing the introduction. Because keep in mind, we leave straight from the 1960s into talking about black popular culture, talking about American popular culture. We go directly into disco, and that's a moment of where white girl flooded into America, cocaine. And while you got white girl flooding into white America, you don't see very many. You if you think about it historically, the historical memory, you can't even identify white folk that got in trouble for possessing or using cocaine. All of the attacks that we hear about cocaine and the arrests are dealing with Latin people, Hispanic people. Okay, Cubans, those people who are bringing white girl up in here. At the exact same time, you're seeing something happen within Black America, and it's not unfortunately, my students, they love to say, well, it was crack jumped on. I'm like, no, you can't look at the 1970s and attribute either cocaine or crack to black folk in a majority sense. You got to look at heroin. Heroin proves to be extremely dangerous for us, because you had almost a perfect storm of the middle America, the soccer moms and those men who were married to them, who are afraid of these changes that are happening in America. They're definitely, and to this day, they don't agree with the LGBTQ plus, movement. So it's a perfect storm. You have black folk, poor black folk, who are sharing needles. And then you have the introduction, the appearance of what we know as initially as GRIDS, gay-related immune deficiency syndrome. Okay, what will become AIDS and HIV. So you think about the initial reaction of America to GRIDS. They felt that it was God's judgment coming here to wipe gays off from the face of the planet Earth. Well, in that same boat are black men who are shooting up heroin. I mean, you go back and I love Parliament, but a group like Parliament is heavily drug cultured. Yeah, the mothership connection, so we have that going on at the exact same time. But what's in many ways going to be the knockout blow for Black America during this time, and nobody's coming, like John Henry Clark said, nobody's coming to save you. They didn't have any consideration or concern for us when GRIDS or HIV begins infecting black men because of IV drug use. They're shooting up with needles. And what problematized that even more and turned the world against us even more was quite simply the down low movement. Because you have brothers who are having sexual relations with other brothers who, in their mind, are not gay. So any of the outreach, any of the educational efforts that was going to the gay community, those brothers considered themselves a separate group and were in no way impacted or affected by it. They didn't stop what they were doing. And when that ball is rolling, that momentum is going, You know, we had these brothers in HIV and AIDS are being proliferated throughout our prisons, and unfortunately, they it's the same thing that happens after slavery. They criminalize blackness, and Joe Biden's crime bill is going to be a major part of that, criminalizing blackness. So here you have brothers who are HIV positive who are in prison, and many of them are going to take the position, I'm going to be gay for the stay. But when they emerge, they're going because they're not flamboyantly gay, they're not feminized, they don't read as femmes. So they come back home and pick up their life with a wife and kids, or at least with a girlfriend and kids. And it's the reason why when you look at data, as of 10 years ago, the most likely people to be carriers of HIV were black women.
Wow.
So when you're talking about when, I would argue that they've always been against black folk. But if you're talking about a period of freedom, I would say, you know, slavery ended in 1865. The lack and absence of sympathy amongst the majority of Americans began in 1865 for black folk, and it hasn't ceased.
Wow. I want to look at Deanna's comment where she says that we forget that black people used to be majority Republicans. Did the Republicans at that time mean something different than the Republicans of today?
Yeah. You would have to, and this is how I explain it to my students. Flip what you think today, where you got black folk in the Democratic Party and white folk, especially Southern white folk in the Republican Party. Just flip it. The Democratic Party initially was going to be it was the party of slavery. They're the ones that are defending the what Kenneth Stamp refers to as the peculiar institution. They're defenders of it. You got to remember that Lincoln, the great emancipator, which is a moniker that I disagree with, but the great emancipator was a Republican. You know, there used to be a time in our community. I know you remember this time when we used to have a lot of young black boys. Like today, we got Taekwons and Rashans, but we used to have a lot of black boys in our community named Thaddeus. That's a name that is due to Thaddeus Stevens. And Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner, who was infamously pistol whipped and beat into unconsciousness in the Senate. They were radical. They were what we called radical Republicans. They were the ones who came out and even attacked Lincoln and told Lincoln, what you need to do is you need to put your foot so far up the Democrats' hind parts that they'll never think to secede again from this nation. Okay. And we don't see a significant lessening of this, because you got to remember that black folk went to the Republican Party and saw some reprieve from the hell that they were catching, and with the Plessy case with Homer A. Plessy. Okay. And when the Plessy decision comes down in 1896, and it substantiates separate but equal is the law of the land here. That was a Republican Supreme Court that said that. In many ways, what they're telling black folk is, look here, don't come to us for any reprieve. But you don't see a major portion of black folk exit the Republican Party until the first term off-year election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He created something called the Black Cabinet. And the person that most black folk would know off of the Black Cabinet is Mary McLeod Bethune of Bethune-Cookman College fame. So you have a large wedge, as my father would refer to it, a large wedge of black folk who leave in 34. The rest that are going to leave, they actually leave in 1960 when John Fitzgerald Kennedy, he razzle-dazzled us. And he was running in the 1960 presidential election. His opponent was Richard Nixon. Okay. And most people have a hard time comprehending this, but Nixon was more pro civil rights than JFK was.
Nixon.
Oh yeah, yeah. But when if you go back and you look at the film The Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Lee Daniels is the butler. The brother put his name in the title of the film. There's a scene in there where the butlers are preparing food, and there's a young politician that is talking to them about their wages, and he says, "Listen, yeah, because see, if I get elected, I'm gonna straighten that out for you. I'm gonna fix that for you." That was Richard Nixon talking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but black folk being we're really into symbolism
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily substance. And that's what many people who are supporting Trump are saying about the difference between with Kamala, why they are opposing her. But what winds up happening is that the biggest troublemaker of the civil rights movement is one of the things that I battle with people about all the time. They like to say that it was Malcolm. It wasn't Malcolm. It was King. King caused problems everywhere he went. One of the things we rarely talk about or acknowledge is that Dr. King was on probation or parole in so many different states. It wasn't funny because he had led some protest or what have you. And so what winds up happening is that Dr. King goes into to support a sitting movement that the students are having. You got to remember that was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and CORE's thing, where they would have these sittings. King goes in to support the students, gets arrested. Well, King's already on probation in that state. They sentenced King to like 6 months of hard labor. He was getting ready to get put on a chain gang.
Mm.
Okay. And Robert, who is, they do two things, which I think was slick. If you want to get black folk to vote for you, one is John F. Kennedy called Coretta, and he simply says, if there's anything that I can do for you or your husband, please let me know. Okay. And he's not president yet. He's the candidate. And Robert, he kept it separate from him. Robert is going to call the judge, and no one knows what he offered him, but he definitely offered him something. Okay, it might have been a federal appointment, as a federal judge. Something was offered in exchange for King's release. Okay, and you have to remember at this time that John F. Kennedy was losing to Richard Nixon in the presidential election. Okay, so he's the one that's got to make a Hail Mary, and they literally made a decision. They ventured to guess that they would be able to get more black votes by helping King, that it would offset the white Southern votes that they would lose. It was a strategic move. And so Robert convinces the judge, bribes the judge, I guess we could say, to go ahead and release King. And they don't just release King. And if you watch one of the episodes of Eyes on the Prize, they don't just release him. They put King on a plane and they fly him to Atlanta. And it looked like paparazzi out there. All these cameras, all these people are there, and they get King coming off of the plane. Coretta's there, all the little Kingettes are there, and it is a hell of a moment for Black America.
Mm.
And so you have that Sunday from you got to remember there's some truth to be found. There's a lot of truth. There's validity in the statement that the most powerful man in Black America on the Sunday before election is the pastor, because he can stand up there and he can tell his congregation who to go vote for. And on that Sunday, black pastors told their congregation, there's only one man for us to vote for, and that man is John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And sort of to further support that idea of the black migration to the Democratic Party, the stragglers that didn't come in 34, is quite simply Daddy King, Martin's father. He was a Republican his entire life until 1960. And then even he switched his allegiance to the Democratic Party. Yeah, so it was really a sleight of hand. It was a razzle dazzle that they did to get him. And Malcolm, you know Malcolm's commentary when Malcolm's saying, quite simply that there really ain't much difference between the Republican and the Democrat. Just like there's Malcolm said there's no difference between the North and the South. That if you're, he said as long as you south of the Canadian border, you south, and he was correct. And when you to bring this back around to black men, you have to really think that black folk are in many ways, black men in particular, are often between a rock and a hard place, because we're living in a white capitalist patriarchal society, and black women are taking their cues from the social structure that white society has, and black men are taking much of their understanding of manhood from the way that white men have handled and dealt with their white women, which ain't always a very good thing. However, the demand, the sort of the prerequisite to being considered a man is to be a financial provider. Okay, women are looking for providers and protectors. So what does that mean for a community that is integrating itself out of any economic power at all, and at the exact same time, you have a movement to further criminalize, well, a continuation of movements to criminalize being black. You get caught up in the prison industrial complex, they're going to sentence you forever because it's good business. So in many ways, you become a pawn of the system, a very important pawn.
Doc, I also, and I want to welcome Brother Willie Rivers to the program. Peace and blessing, Brother Willie. We're glad that you're here. I also want to look at something else Sister Deanna said when it came to assimilation. She was saying,
now, whoa, integration. Black folk have never assimilated. You can't assimilate, regardless of how much you try. You ain't gonna never be able to assimilate. The best that you could hope to do is integrate yourself and to serve the interest of white society.
Okay, here's the quote that she said: "Nation building is what we did not do. Assimilation has been a large part of our downfall." So, and that, where did that idea?
What is that?
Come from? The idea, assimilation, integration, that it would be more progressive for us to try to fit in than separate. Who was the author of that idea?
Well, I mean, you have to, and I don't snub my nose at those who are trying to integrate with American society. And the reason I don't is because you go back and you look at it, and I don't care if you're going all the way back to the Dred Scott decision, where Justice Taney talks about that a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. Go forward to the Plessy decision, go to Brown 1, go to Brown 2, and what have you. There are different laws. There's a difference on the law books of America in the laws that govern black folk and white folk until you get into the mid 1960s. So it's very important for you to go ahead and become equal on the law books of America. That's what they were fighting for. When they're talking about equality, view us the same way you view white folk in regards to the law. Now, there is a difference in one of the things that I do with people often is I ask them this question, especially black folk. Do you believe that you're equal to white folk in regards to the law, society, how you're viewed? And they invariably say no. I ask them this question. I'll ask you the same question. Name me one law that white folk have that you don't.
I can't.
Yeah, that was one of the goals of the civil rights movement. You know, what Dr. King says is that what we're trying to do is get equality on the law books of America. He says the civil rights movement had two steps. The first stage was to get equality on the law books of America. That is crucial. He said, but this nation never tried the second step, the second stage, which is the exercise of that equality. That's why, even though you know you are no different from them on what is codified in legal books, you know that you ain't gonna be treated the same. You know that black folk get long, that we get convicted more, we get longer sentences, and what have you. You know, Ice Cube said, you know, in one of his raps, he said, yeah, you know, you better duck because the book is coming. So just hand your car keys over to your woman. You know, we all know that we're not, that Lady Justice is not blind when it comes to us. So when we're talking about the idea of equality, it was equality in the law books of America. We didn't have a, you know, kind of what happened with World War II, when black soldiers are going to fight. Black soldiers fight under a very interesting banner that we should have carried forward into the civil rights movement. And it was the double V campaign. They were going for victory abroad and victory at home. A clear understanding that we're going to Europe to handle business, but when we come back here, our job is not even halfway done, because we need to get equality on the law books and the exercise of that equality. This nation never tried to get to a point of exercising that equality. And when you're dealing with a populace, meaning white folk who view their black countrymen with such disdain, you're never going to be able to get over that hurdle. Never. And it's the reason why you'll never get reparations. It's why the Jews whose suffering happened in Germany and Europe are able to get reparations, because their racial brand and how they're viewed by the world is so sympathetic. Versus us, we're viewed as people who are more likely to end up on World Star Hip Hop. So you're chunked off, and keep in mind that these images that denigrate black folk, make no mistake about it, black folk consume them too. It's the reason why you see black girls out here replicating a sexy red. Our generation, they were replicating a Lil' Kim, you know. So we eat, digest, and believe these same images, yet at the exact same time we'll turn around and say, but that ain't me. Yeah, well, it's you too, you know, because you swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. And those of us who don't follow that programming are going to be ostracized and denigrated. Look at the whole thing with black kids going on to this very day, that if they are scholarly and they are successful, that they're called what? Acting white.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sister Diana, she has a couple of good questions and comments in here that I want us to deal with. But first, I want to go to what Mac.
No, I ain't on the clock now. I ain't getting paid for this now.
So Mac said, I watched the Root series in memory of our late brother John Amos. I find it very strange that we didn't learn about his death until 2 months after his passing. This is a sad state of Black men. Now, Doc, with Brother Amos, even though he presented, in all his movies that I've seen, he always presented a strong,
A strong, dignified man.
exactly. But in real life, he was married to the cracker.
Okay.
and so and I sat back and I thought about that, like, you play this on TV, but in
You're
your
acting.
heart of heart,
You're acting.
mm,
You're playing a role. You're acting. I mean, it's not out. It's not out of the the realm, and it's a conversation that we should have. Does marrying, bedding down, having feelings for, um, as Brother Umar Johnson refers to them as snow bunnies, does that invalidate your worth, utility, and your contributions to the Black nation?
mm,
And John Amos is no different from um, arguably our great one of our greatest writers of the post Harlem Renaissance, the Chicago Renaissance. Richard Wright. Richard Wright was married to a European, a white woman. Yeah, yeah.
wow.
So that's not a for me. I try to stay out of people's personal business and deal with them as far as their intellectual contributions to the struggle in the race. But um, it's not that's uncommon, and I would argue that for some people, that may be the best fit for them. Now as to
Wait a minute, Doc. You said marrying the cracker would be the best fit for the Black man?
there's some people I believe that is the best fit for them. I do believe that. Yeah. Because I think that selecting a mate and dealing with someone, um, a lot goes into it as far as what is it that you personally need. There are some people who need a woman that they would consider that they could handle, that they could control, that would be very submissive to them. I got a couple partners who married Asian, and the thing that they like about them is that they are so accommodating, so submissive to them and what have you. So hey, that's what fit with them when they were prepared to forge a serious relationship. Now, as to what that says about them, to their politics and what have you, I don't know. I try to stay out of. I personally don't even want to know about your personal life, because people have all kinds of things that happen in their personal lives and why it happens in their personal lives. I know what my position is and what I'm going to do for me. Um, but other folk, that's your thing. You do what you do. Because I've seen some Black women do Black men in, and I've seen some Black men do Black women in. And I think that for some people, their hurt and their anger at being betrayed by anyone causes them and leads them to pursue other options. It could be a manifestation of Stockholm syndrome. It could be, it could be a host of things that lead people to do what they do. So I just stay out of it.
Wow.
Now I'm not saying all white women are submissive or all Asian women are submissive. What I'm saying is that they found what they consider to be their fit. And I know several couples who have been, dude I went to high school with, he married an Asian girl. And matter of fact, today is their 30th wedding anniversary. They weren't even 25 when they got married. and they're still together to this day. And I know some black couples who are like that as well. You know, they found a woman that they could fit with.
Mm. Well, we definitely gonna do a program on that one. Wow. So, Doc, I want to go to our sister's other question. Would you consider that that integration?
Could I see the question? Could I read it?
Yeah. Let me go back and find it.
You gotta remember, multi-part questions throw me. That's one of the many things I live with. After being sick.
Let's see. Okay, here we go. It is still deceptive technology. Dealing with integration.
What is
integration?
Integration is still
Yes.
deceptive technology. I always rely upon this quote from Jane Elliott, the white educator that did the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment. And Jane Elliott, and actually I had to go through one of her workshops because I had got in trouble at Ohio State, and I said some things in the class, and black folk reported me, and so that was one of my parts of my sentence. I had to go through that program, and she makes a statement, and she's made it on video as well. She tries to get black folk. She says, y'all got to toughen up, and y'all are going to have to treat these white folk, these blue-eyed people, like they've treated you. And she says, well, you black folk know how to get ahead in society. How you get ahead in society is acting white. Okay, now this is coming from a white woman. I think that there's some of us who do our best to act white, but what people would term acting white. But I think that what's really being said is that you have to learn how to find your place. And it's usually a subordinate place within white society, a white corporation, what have you. And you can earn your medal, your rank, their respect by serving their interests. By, if you're working for a Microsoft, you're working for a IBM, for whatever corporation it is, you go in there and you do a good job for them. You help that corporation and that company grow. You don't necessarily go in there with an idea of learning how things work so that you could eventually break away and create a black rival. That's what integration is. And to integrate means that, for all intents and purposes, you are now a part of the process of white world domination and racism. We're so quick to talk about racism and what it is from a emotional basis. They say, well, that means that white folk don't like you. How someone feels about you has nothing to do with racism. Racism is a system that has been set up to guarantee that whites, regardless of their independent Republicans or Democrats, regardless of if they live in Montana, New York State, or Texas, maintain their birthright for their children. And that birthright, if you go back and you look at what they're talking about with James Monroe and the idea of manifest destiny, they believe that their God gave them this land for them to prosper. Now, if you want to learn how to work better for them, and you want to figure out how to prosper for them, yeah, they're gonna slide you what Richard Pryor referred to as some twos and fews. But you're an employee, and don't you dare get that mixed up. Look at Puff's situation. All the millions of dollars, and they brought that brother down. Okay. Puff been doing this for 20, 30 years. But it wasn't until he got out of his place and he sued the white corporation that had used him as the front man. Okay, they put some twos and fews in his pocket, but it didn't match what it was that they were earning. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the idea of racism. We're not talking about them calling you ugly names. Shit, they call the Jews ugly names, but the Jews are still circulating money in their community. It's seemingly only our people who are so triggered by words and those types of things, negative words hurled at them. You know, we need to focus and stay on task.
Mm. Is there? Do you see that there's a difference between assimilation and integration?
Almost certainly, there's a difference.
Break it down.
Okay, when you're talking about the idea of like you ever been out to one of those restaurants that had a fondue, a cheese
Mhm.
fondue, where
Mhm.
they melt the different types of cheeses in there? Okay, what are
Right.
your favorite types of cheese? And
Um,
Negro, don't you say no Velveeta. That ain't cheese.
I like Parmesan and Swiss cheese.
Okay, let's say we got Parmesan, we got Swiss cheese, and we put it in a fondue.
Mhm.
Question: can you reach in there and get Swiss cheese out?
No,
Why not?
because it's all mixed up.
They melt it together. You can't separate it anymore.
Right.
Okay, that's assimilation. Okay,
Okay.
what you're seeing with assimilation is what happened. When was the last time that you saw a German walking down the street? You ain't seen one because you see a white person. The
Mm-hmm.
Germans, the Russians, the Slavs, the Italians, they've been assimilated into whiteness. They've been
Mm.
mongrelized. Integration is different. Integration, the greatest analogy would probably be a salad. What do you like in your salad? What type of lettuce you like? Don't say no iceberg. We,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be teaching
I
other people better.
don't know nothing about no lettuce. Lettuce is lettuce. I don't
Okay.
know.
All right. No, it ain't. Let's say you got romaine lettuce, you
Mm-hmm.
got spinach, you got
Mm-hmm.
tomatoes in there. You have black olives. You may have green olives, onions, uh, mild banana peppers, what have you. You may
Mm-hmm.
douse it with, garlic, salt, and pepper, what have you. Put some pieces of
Mm-hmm.
chicken in there. Can you reach in that salad and grab out a black olive?
Yeah, if you see it in there, you can. Yeah.
That's the difference. In integration, you maintain you're part of a larger collective, but you maintain your kind of your identity and your autonomy.
Mm. Wow. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I want to go back through these comments to see if I missed anything before we go to the video part. Oh yeah, yeah. Here we go. N N said, from what I understand, black people are fighting the white man, but not the white woman. I get it. Um, Now, when he stated that, automatically I thought back to Haiti. When they were fighting their Revolutionary War.
Okay.
They even wrote in their constitution that white women, they can own property, but white man can't own property.
Okay. Okay.
This distinction, I personally think the white woman is more dangerous than the white man. But do you see that there's a distinction that the white woman is safe compared to the white man? What's your thoughts on that?
You're asking me?
Yes.
No, during the 1960s and 1970s, and you got to remember that much of what we know as affirmative action is going to occur during Nixon's presidential administration. Um, when they moved the idea of affirmative action from being what it should have been, which is reparations for Black folk, correcting an injury, repairing an injury that we received for the 100 years since the ending of slavery. And they opened it up to quote unquote minority groups. White men were slick enough to realize that if you're going to set aside 45% of the business for minority groups, and you consider white women to be a minority group, I'm just going to put my company in my wife's name. And now it is able to get minority contracts. You know, white women eventually become the single greatest beneficiary of affirmative action contracts and dealings and what have you. They are working in cahoots with each other. You know, just think about how white folk talk about Barack and Michelle Obama. They don't just hate Barack; they hate Michelle as well, because they feel as if when they went to sleep, before they went to sleep, they was having pillow talk. You can't separate the two. You know, and it's foolish and dangerous for you to believe that you can separate the two, because Mr. Cartwright, he runs his house.
Mhm.
And Mr. Cartwright will kill everybody up in here, including the dog, if things don't go his way. So it's in many ways a bit unwise, if not ridiculous, to think that the white woman has or can or ever will or has even the intention of standing alone and apart from her man. You know, even when the CEO of Coca-Cola was a white woman, they asked her what her home life was like, because she's making millions of dollars and her husband probably wasn't even making six figures. And she said, "Oh, no, no, no. When I get home, you know, I'm a wife. He's still the head of my household."
Oh, wow.
So you have to really filter it through that type of lens, that they've always worked in conjunction with each other. Now they may fight amongst themselves
Mm-hmm.
for a larger share of the pie, or who's going to control that pie. And
Mm-hmm.
many people fail to understand that when white women, and keep in mind that political participation is considered the sport of gentlemen. You had to be wealthy, you had to have some free leisure time to be politically active. um, so when you're looking at the first wave of feminism, and these women are talking about they want equality, black, poor brown, poor white women had to be scratching their heads saying, "Who in the fuck told y'all couldn't work?"
Mm.
Because we've been working this entire time. They
Mm-hmm.
ain't talking about that. What they're talking about is, if my daddy died and he's a newspaper tycoon, I should be able to inherit that. I should have the same rights to inherit that money as my brothers do. That's what they're talking about. So they work in. I hesitate to say they're one and the same, but they're working in tandem with each other. You know, it was never an idea of loosening up the control of the political economic monopolies that they've had throughout the 20th century, and allowing other groups. They ain't that progressive, where they
Mm.
can say, "Well, yeah, what we want is to allow black women to have this type." No, they ain't said that. They ain't that progressive. They're talking about, how do I increase my share and my privilege. So, nah, separating them, nah, you that's myopic right there. That's short sighted.
Mm. Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So we're going to move to the video section, and they're not long. They're all little clips, and then we're going to get your perspective. Um, when would you consider, is the black man and the white man equal?
In what sense? In what context?
Equal as being men?
You would have to define for me what men. Well, you know what I'm saying. Now, if you're asking me, are we? I don't even believe that people enter into this world before we know anything equal. I believe that we all have our own specific gifts and talents and things like that. Now, if you're talking about society-wise, no, emphatically no. You know, there's a class of white men who are. This is, to be honest with you, this is they shit,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a guest in their house, and we rarely talk about it in those terms, but that's what it is. And if provided the right stimuli or impetus, they can show you. They can show you who you really are. And you know, all of that wealth, all of that fame, with all that richness and all that fame, they can strip that away from you. Look at Kanye, look at R. Kelly, look at Puff now. Okay, and I'm not even dealing with are they guilty or not for what they were charged with.
Right.
But they can be taken away.
Okay.
So I would say
you would say no. Okay. All right, here we go to our first video.
Don't put your hands in your pockets. Don't put your hoodie on. Don't be outside with no shirt on. Check in with your people. It don't matter even if you're down the street. Don't be out too late. Don't touch anything you're not buying. Never leave the store without a receipt or a bag, even if it's just a pack of gum. Never make it look like there's an altercation between you and someone else. Never leave the house without your ID. Don't drive with a wife beater on. Don't drive with a do-rag on. Don't go out in public with neither. Don't ride with the music too loud. Don't stare at a Caucasian woman. If a cop stop you randomly and start questioning you, don't talk back. Just compromise. If you ever get pulled over, hands on the dashboard, and ask, could you get out your license and registration? Don't.
Okay. So here we have a young brother who's given tips to how to survive as a black man in America.
Mm-hmm.
And taking everything into consideration that he said. So the question has to be, one question is, white men don't tell their children this, or do you think white men tell their children this?
No, not at all. I mean, when you look at the rearing and raising of white children, especially white boys versus black boys, I mean, anybody in the audience, I mean, we can, you know, put a one in the chat if you've ever seen this. Put a 0 if you haven't. Have you ever seen white male children wilding out in a store, running around, acting a fool, sometimes even cursing their parents? Their children are raised without any guardrails. They're allowed to go out into the world and explore. They're allowed to go out and experience some things. We know that the absence of rearing and raising our children increases the chances that they will be jailed, if not killed, by the age of 21, probably by tenfold.
What is the solution that has to take place so that you don't have to hear instructions like that the young man was providing that would make black people safe?
The good Lord would have to come back and destroy this planet and everybody on it. And we would have to start over again. Because in many ways, what you're talking about is a mentality. Okay? Blackness is viewed suspectly even by black folk. You know, go back to, and I know that it's a movie, but this proves my point. If you go back to Boys in the Hood, and you had Furious Styles and Trey talking to the officer after the brother had broke into their house, the brother expressed, you know, and he's a black cop, he expressed such disdain and hatred for black folk. You know, one of the things that we often omit when we talk about these things is that Black folk are believing and ingesting many of these same images, many of these same ideas. So, yeah, you know, this brother, what he just said is in many ways almost a rule book down to the T that I taught my son.
Mm.
I need for my son to survive. Whatever interaction it is with the police, I need for you to survive. Because if you don't survive, I can't survive.
Mm. Awesome. Exactly. All right, we're going to go to our next video.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Rappers.
Hey, what you think the modern black man of today is?
A punk? Yeah, a punk.
Ain't nothing wrong. Like you could be straight, you know, have
That ain't nothing to do with his sexuality. A punk.
Oh.
He can't do push-ups. He can't chop wood. He don't own a pair of work boots, and he walk around in slippers every day. What if the war break out? What if the Ukraine people had slippers on when Russia invaded them? They had to be in trouble. Today's black boys wouldn't know what to do if they was in Ukraine and had to pick up arms and went to defend and shit.
Yeah.
These is punks today. They don't know how to fix nothing. They can't fish. Ask them niggas when the last time they went to target practice shooting a gun. No. I mean, most niggas can't throw jabs, uppercuts, crosses, and hooks and not look feminine.
Yeah.
Nah, I hate rappers.
Hey, what you think the modern black man of today is?
A punk.
And so that was Charleston White, who, like, the question was about the state of modern black men today in America. And so his response, as we all heard, that the modern day black man in America is a punk. Doc, how would you assess his reasonings, his thoughts on that?
You know, Charleston has a very interesting familial background, to be honest with you. And he's talked about how he was raised. And he was raised amongst dignified people down here, I want to say in Fort Worth, Texas. But I think that, you know, when he's saying that there's a lot of validity to it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that that's our fault because we have not structured a world where we take our boys through what other groups take their boys through as far as developing what is your long-term goal? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What does this mean? How do you do this? You know, what is really life about? What makes it worthwhile? We've allowed our children to, in many ways, be educated or miseducated within a system that has not given them any, not only life skills, but hasn't even given them any reasonings. They don't understand even what questions that should be asked. You know, and it's one of the primary problems that we're dealing with is quite simply that they cannot define what it means to be a man.
Mm.
And not only can they not define it, we haven't stepped in a significant way to correct that and to show them what it means to be a man. And so as a result of that, they end up picking up pieces of almost folklore and mythology in regards to what a man should be and what a man ought to do. But we do have a sizable populace. We do have some within our midst that because I fight against sort of using these wide brushstrokes and talking about all black folk, but we do have some brothers who are mentoring, and we do have some who are understanding many of these substantive things. But so much of it comes down to us as adults dropping the ball and not creating a program for our children to be able to flourish and develop, because honestly, quite honestly, they don't know what they should be doing. You know, their idea of going to a gun range, the reason to go to a gun range is to practice your shot so that you can shoot down other black people. We need to address that. We should have addressed that a long time ago. And it kind of takes me back to how we were talking about the commission. Yeah, that's a national level thing. We're talking about face-to-face interactions with black boys, showing them what manhood looks like, okay, how it behaves, how it walks, how it even structures its sentences, how we speak.
Who established what a black man should be? Where does that? Who established that? Where does that?
Black men. Black men. Black men established what a black man ought to be and ought to do. It's just the fact that our voices have been muted, significantly muted. You know, you think about it this way, that right at the present moment, understanding that the majority of black children are in public schools, we have to get permission from white school boards, white superintendents, white principals, or black people who are afraid of losing their job that white folk hold and dangle over them when white folk gave them that job. We got to go through all those hoops to even be allowed access into a school, to touch the minds of our children. And our parents, as you know, you know this story, this part of me very well, the Saturday school that we created, okay, where we could control our own curriculum and what we were doing, this and that. The most kids we ever had there on any weekend was 4. And that ties directly into what have the parents been taught is worthwhile. And yet at the exact same time, these are the same people who say, yeah, what we need to do is educate our own. We need to, well, you know, we actually had a physical building. We had teachers, professors who were volunteering their time. And y'all still didn't come. So in every way, when you're talking about the process of making a man, you know, I believe what Chairman Fred Hampton said. He said that people primarily learn through 2 means: observation and participation. So you got to show them, and you also got to participate, allow them to participate so that they can learn. Hands-on learning.
All right, awesome. Now we're going to take a look at the next video. And this is Charleston White again, speaking on the current state of Black America.
We ain't good no more. It's some individual good people, but collectively we f***ed up, tainted, poisoned, and we cannot keep continuing making babies. This group have to be destroyed. We have to be wiped out, homie, because of the hearts of this group of black people, homie. We too hateful. We don't even love each other. We don't like white people. We don't like nobody. We have become the new slave master. The white boy used to be mean to everybody. When you look at the old movies, when the white man go to everybody's establishment, what do? He complains, hey, get in here, give me a waitress. Knock his drink on the table, spill, unruly. That's us now. Every establishment. We ain't good no more. It's some individual good people, but collectively we f***ed up, tainted, poisoned, And we cannot keep continuing making babies. This group have to be destroyed. We have to be wiped out, homie, because of the hearts of this group of black people, homie. We too hateful. We don't even love each other. We don't like white people. We don't like nobody. We have become the new slave master. The white boy used to be mean to everybody. When you look at the old movies, when the white man go to everybody's establishment, what do? He complains, hey, get in here, get me a waitress. Knock his drink on the table, spill, unruly. That's us now. Every establishment.
Your thoughts, Doc?
I believe he's correct when he's talking about how unruly we are. That we are, for all intents and purposes, mean. You know, think about just how we process a person being polite and appropriate. You know, being nice. You know, that's nice people eventually end up. You know, because I consider myself being a nice person, but when people look at my face, they're like, "Ooh, you know, you look mean as can be." You know. But the truth of the matter is no, I'm a nice person. I'm a good guy. And having said that, I know that I can't treat everyone nicely, you know, because for some people that's not their they don't understand that language. And you know, thank God I'm multilingual because I can change my verse. I can change my words that I'm using to the language that you do understand. I think that a big part of what Charleston is saying, and I'll only deal with black folk, it is quite simply that, and I always call on this brother because you know I think he's one of the most overlooked rappers to ever exist. Grand Verbalizer Funk. He made this statement. He says, "Listen, ignorance is not a trend." And when you're talking about the transference of culture and how we do what it is that we do, a lot of times you don't know why you do what you do, but you know your mama and your daddy did it that way. Well, let that turn bad. And if that turns bad, then you got an issue. Because who's going to stop it? Who's going to reverse it? Who's going to get? I was at Walmart last week, and I'm checking out, and I just lowered my head because I saw 3 generations of black women from had to been maybe a 4 or 5 year old sister who looked like she was probably in her mid-20s to what was a grandmother who's probably 50, and all 3 of them had bonnets on. How do you undo that now that it's been that? Because you know that child isn't going to know nothing other than wearing a bonnet. You know, you have children today who know nothing other than to be hellraisers, you know, and they consider that to be the personification of being black. They don't consider niceness. They've equated niceness and politeness with weakness. And if you want it, you better go out there and get it. And listen at even the terms that we utilize when we're talking about success. We say quite simply, see, I had to go out and I had to get it out the mud, regardless of if that was true or not. Okay, the imagery that you use. Look at for those of us who still read, look at the books and the writings that they're into. They're into these urban pimp chronicles.
Right.
Look at the TV that so many of our people watch. They're watching these reality TV things, and they're aspiring to be like those people, to get the material accoutrements that some television station has given them to wear while they're on this show. So I understand what Charleston is saying, and I'm reminded of something that Chuck D from Public Enemy said, where he quite simply said, "Turn the radio off." Okay, I think we need to turn the radio off. We need to turn the TV off. We need to turn all of that off. That we ought to have a black station, a black curriculum, where progressive, enlightened black folk determine what is going to be shown, and any of that buffoonery is not going to be allowed in our homes and our TVs. I'll give you a perfect example. Fox Soul,
Mm.
which I think the Black Fox channel, they have a show on there called The Face Off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a white guy on there. I don't know the white guy's name because I've never watched it. The white guy on there debating Quanell X
Mm.
for hours every day.
Wow.
You know, and you think about what is the message, what is the programming that is coming from that. And you know, Dick Gregory told us, he said, white folk are not going to put no superheroes, no black superheroes up there to enlighten your mind. And because we don't have our own independent mediums, that's what our children digest. And those children grow up to have babies, grow up to be grandparents, and grow up to be great grandparents. So in many ways, what Charleston is saying, I agree with. That, you know, it's going to take the good Lord to come out here and come back and you know, let's have another flood.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay, we're going to go to the next film. And this one is with Smokey Robinson talking.
Uh-oh.
You have said that you resent the idea of being called an African American, that
Yes.
you are a Black American.
Yes.
Explain.
I think that when they call Black people who were born and raised for generations in this country, if you accept the handle of African American, that says that you don't accept being an American American. You don't accept being born in Chicago or New York or Detroit or wherever you were born. For generations, your family has been here, you know, built this country too. Sweat and tears and all that, you know, fought in every war, okay? So this is my country here. So I don't want to be called African American. I'm an American American. My people have died and done everything for this country.
You have said that you
What's your thoughts on that, Doc? We can't hear you, Doc.
I'm a person who consciously and intentionally refers to himself as Black, because I believe that it is a political declaration. It is public notice of where it is that I stand politically, economically, socially, where my allegiance lies. It lies in Blackness, and it lies within the working class as well. I don't get caught up in should we be Black or African American, because I really do think that there's an element of cowardice associated with over-analysis. You know, you're still analyzing, so you ain't got to move. You ain't got to stand on that. You know, so I hear what he's saying, but I mean, let's be fair and consistent in our view of Brother Smokey Robinson, and say that he's not an intellectual. He's not a thinker necessarily. He's a singer, you know, and what he's trying to talk about and break apart could have been done so much better by so many other people.
Okay. You know, in Coates' book, The Message, I don't know how to pronounce his first name,
Ta-Nehisi.
Ta-Nehisi, okay.
Yeah, he's the son of Paul Coates, who had Black Classic Press. That's his book.
Okay. Well, in his book, The Message, I was reading, and he said he was over in Africa, and his dad called him and was like, our understanding of what Africa is dead, and it will never be. It will never rise again.
Mhm.
Their thinking of what Africa was. He said he was reading and he come across something where it was saying that, you know, our African brothers and sisters sold us into slavery. And once the dad read that and understood that, where that came from, then the thought that they had of Africa was dead now. When you look at the African leaders and what they're doing to their own people, Africa is dead. Their thinking of what Africa should be and must be is dead. It will never be that.
Mhm.
And when I read that, I was like, oh wow. But is that true? Is the thought of what Africa is and should be, is that dead and will never rise?
You asking me? Would you stop? Stop. Someone's trying to get attention. If you're asking me, honestly, I'll just speak from my experience.
Mhm.
I can tell you that Africa and stop. And the fact that we're referring to it as, can you give me 1 second? Give me
Mhm.
1 second.
Okay.
Boom. That's how you back up. Try to work with you. There you go. All right. Sorry about that. What my experience first off is that Africa is a continent, and we begin to romanticize Africa from the moment that we begin to talk about it as if it's a cohesive unit,
Right.
as if it's a cohesive people, that there's one group of people there, and this group of people, they all believe this, and they all believe they're no more monolithic than we are, period. So that to travel to Africa and to have these romantic notions that, yeah, you know, Africa, we can join together, this and though. If you study the history and you learn the history, just take a look at what Kwame Nkrumah, who becomes the first president of independent Ghana, experienced. And you got to remember, Nkrumah was educated at an HBCU here, Lincoln University. Yeah. And then he went back to be the first independent president of Ghana.
Mm.
Nkrumah, very much like Malcolm, he studied white folks' history. And he came to an understanding that there's strength in numbers. So Nkrumah goes back with the idea of creating, he said, we aren't strong enough to stand alone against Europeans. They have their continent, and even with them having their own continent, you know, they're not all on the same page. Beyond, we need to exploit Africa.
Mhm.
Okay, they're almost in a free for all with almost a loose understanding of we'll do what's best for us individually, but if push comes to shove, collectively we'll work together. Nkrumah tries to get African leaders to join together and create what is loosely considered a United States of Africa. Okay. African leaders balked at that idea. Many of them said, yeah, we understand what Nkrumah's saying.
Mhm.
He wants a United States of Africa, but he'll be the president. So no one wanted to give up any power, any autonomy. They don't necessarily want to have to defend each other and work with each other. So the idea of Africans being of one accord is a fallacious one. I mean, you look at a place like Nigeria, you know, uh, the what are they? I can't think. It slipped my mind. The Yoruba. They'll say, well, I'm this, I'm that, and they're talking about their ethnic identity. Look at Rwanda, the Hutu and the Tutsis. So there's a lot of filling in the gaps that you can make when you don't know, and you're filling it in with what it is that you want to be. At the same time, that what Coates is talking about is that the Africa that we want, and this really applies to those who have gone back, who have become expats or have repatriated themselves. What they want is to go back and to save Africa.
Mm.
And in many ways, their ideas are very similar to what happened in Liberia, when you had black folk who went back there and they felt that they should be running Liberia because they've been around white folk and they know how a nation should be run. You can't, if you're being fair, you can't do that. And one of the questions that I asked one of the elders one of the years I was in Africa, I said, what do I owe Africa? And she looked at me and she said, nothing.
Mm.
You don't owe Africa anything. She said, don't come back here trying to change Africa to fit what it is that you think it should be. She said, what you should be doing is to ask yourself, what does Africa owe you? And if you come back here, you come back here with a servant's heart and a willingness to heal from all that you've been through. And so we romanticize Africa. We think it's something that it never was. We never were what we used to be. And that's a whole nother discussion. So I don't, I understand what Coates is saying. And for many people, it's a troubling mental hurdle and stumbling block that they're never able to get over.
Mm.
Igbo. I was thinking about Igbo, not Yoruba. Igbo.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have to definitely get into that conversation as well. That's going to be a very interesting one. Because even I had to think about that, of what I perceive Africa to be. And then it's very interesting where you said that the person told you, don't come to Africa looking to change it. But even and maybe you can chop that up a little bit more, because in Africa's present condition, and well, let me, because that wouldn't be fair. That wouldn't be fair to say it like that. For the countries that I know of what's going on in Africa, which would be South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, Kenya.
And each one of them has a separate, distinctive history.
Exactly. But when I look at them, to me, and you would know better because you actually been there. To me, they're no good to their own people. They're not really servicing their people as they should be, as far as education, the quality of life in the countries, the economic opportunities, as far as, just taking care of your people, so that they can live productive lives. I don't think that Africa is doing what it could do for its people. What's your thoughts on that?
But see, my thing would be, my response to that would be, and it reminds me of this, and I know you've seen this moment, this this fiery moment when Mr. Farrakhan was talking to Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, and he says Mike Wallace is talking about, I believe it was Nigeria,
Right.
and the minister gets angry, and he says that's a country in its infant stages. Okay, and you should shut up about their business because look at how young they are. You're dealing with a nation that is in a people who are young, yet at the exact same time that they should be building their infrastructure, they are seeing an outside world that is advancing at a rapid pace and incredibly. And oftentimes you're going to find a situation where they're going to take out loans to try and accelerate their growth and their stability. Now you're in every way enslaved to these people who loaned you this money. These, the IMF, whoever is giving out money to these nations, and they're gonna get their money back one way or another. Okay, gonna get 10 times what they gave you back one way or another. So to say that they're not doing right by their people, I think you have to pump your brakes on that, because who is the they? There's so many different factors. And when you have, and this is one of the things, this is a Marxian construct. And it's one of the things that I became exposed to it via studying the Black Panther Party. Karl Marx said that you should never build your party upon the lumpen proletariat, meaning the common street people, the brothers off of the block. Because he says they're always in contact with the police, and there's a danger associated with your group or organization being infiltrated. That's one thing. He said, but the other thing is there's a level of poverty and impoverishment that makes it too expensive for a person to be loyal and honest. Take an African leader and offer him $500 million and a villa on the French Riviera, to sign a contract that is not in the financial best interest of his people. Do you think he'll do it?
Yeah.
See, there you go. And if he's not willing to do it, they'll get someone to, you got to remember that when Kwame Nkrumah was, when he was deposed, they had a coup that put Nkrumah out. Okay, now he's the man that brought them independence, and they put his ass out. The United States government, the CIA, was behind that. Okay, the historical records prove that. So if the African leader is not willing to sell his people out, they'll just kill him. They'll get somebody in his inner circle to kill him, because how much is your life really worth? And that's what we're really dealing with when we're talking about our people often. We have these insatiable materialistic desires, but we're by all means really impoverished. Now, you might be able to go out and make you a couple million, you might be able to get you a Rolls Royce or what have you, yet at the exact same time, that can be taken away from you whenever they want to take it away from you. So you're going to be beholden to them the entire time. So those nations are young, and those nations are being often run and controlled and administrated by individuals who are impoverished themselves. And you consider 500 million, 100 million to someone who has never had money before. Yeah, he's going to take that deal. And the people will remain as impoverished as they were before. There is no other real explanation beyond grifting for the fact that the continent that God French kiss the deepest in regards to planting mineral resources, gold, diamonds, quartz, everything that you want is found in abundance in Africa, even rubber. And for it to be the paupers of the globe is inexcusable.
Now, you said Nkrumah went to Lincoln University, and that's shocking. I didn't know that. So, just a little bit before we go to the next video, but just what's his background? Was he born here or what?
No. He came here. He's native Ghanaian, and he came here to study, just like so many others from around the globe come here to study. It was just time for the British to leave, and Nkrumah goes there, and in many ways, it's not a major physical battle or anything. They basically gotten all the good that they feel they can get out of Ghana, and they go ahead and they're going to leave. But before they leave, they tear down the entire infrastructure. Even the telephone poles, the light poles, they take that shit out. Anything that they put in there, they tried to take away. So you're talking about, once again, a nation that is starting from ground zero. And so you're talking about, when you look at a place like, let's say, a Ghana, independence wise, Ghana's not 80 years old. And think about where the United States was at 80 years into its existence. Okay. It was actually just coming out of a civil war where one group of citizens fought against another group of citizens. Does that not sound like what happened in Rwanda? You're talking about young nations, especially when you begin to talk about when did your independence actually start. And for some of them who are technically independent, they're still in bed with Europeans, so you can't even really call them independent.
Wow.
I mean, think about like an Idris Elba. You know, Idris is Nigerian, but he was raised in Britain. He sounds like a British man when he talks. You know, so that lets you know. And you know, in the latest ones to jump on the African breast to further strengthen themselves has been the Asians. They're there now. Impregnating African women, because what they're going to do is textbook. These mulatto children that they're producing there will be the administrators for their business interests as they go forward, and they will be set apart from regular Africans and given some semblance of privilege. The exact same thing that happened in New Orleans with the Creole, the Indians, the French, and the Africans.
Do you know what made him choose Lincoln versus Howard or something else?
No, I don't know why he ended up at Lincoln. No. But and I want to say the Lincoln he was at was the one in Pennsylvania.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. And we're going to go to our last video for tonight. Let's see. I'm going to have to ask my aunt about it because she graduated from Lincoln.
From Lincoln?
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania? Because there's one in Oklahoma, too.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Because now you do know who the richest HBCU grad is. They went to Lincoln.
Oh, really?
The one in Oklahoma. Yeah. One of Sam Walton's daughters graduated from there.
Walmart?
A Walmart thing, yeah. Wow. She went to Lincoln. She went to an HBCU.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Wow.
She's the richest HBCU grad ever.
Damn. Now that's something.
For those who like to look down their nose at HBCUs, Sam Walton's daughter attended and graduated from one.
Wow, that is wow. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. Let's go. Well, I hope she contribute to them. All right, let's go to the next video.
What the shit?
Watch your mouth.
The fuck you say, nigga? Yo, let me just see this right quick. You get a pack of Phillies. Phillies, not backwards.
Backwards.
Phillies! Philly, are you deaf?
No hat.
You speak English, bitch? I said Phillies, nigga. What the shit?
Watch your mouth.
Fuck you say, nigga?
Say, watch your mouth.
You watch your fucking mouth, nigga. Fuck wrong with you? Huh? How the fuck that feel, nigga?
Hey, what the fuck you doing, nigga? Hey, fall back. I said fall back. Fall the fuck back. When I tell you to move, you fucking move, you hear me?
This motherfucker was talking shit.
You know who the hell that is? Fix your face, don't fucking look at him. That's OG Merc. You would never flag the fly if it wasn't for that brother right there. That cold-hearted motherfucker would have dropped you dead before you could even pull the fucking trigger. So you better fucking recognize, don't do that shit again.
What the shit?
Watch your mouth.
So there we go, dealing with OG Merc. Now, this is a...
I'm proud to say I have no idea where that came from.
This is a clip, a movie that, of course, probably went throughout the world, in showing that this is what black men is like.
What movie was that?
I don't know what movie it was. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
That was Tyrese, correct?
Yeah. 1992. That's the name of the movie. 1992.
Okay.
Yeah, 1992. It came out this year though, in 2024. Yeah, 1992.
Okay.
And so, what's your thoughts of movies like this that portray black men, black youth in that type of environment and send it out? Is this productive? Is this something that should be done? And what are the good and the negative effects of it, if it has any?
You know, it might surprise you to hear me say this, but I believe that there are people who are like that. I know there are people who are like that. And I know there are situations that are like that. So coming from that perspective, I don't have a problem with it. Okay. The problem I have is that there's not something to counterbalance that. Okay. That's all that is being propagated and broadcast across the airways. But at the same time that we have him, we have these other images that the last show you showed Rock being against the drug dealers. So it's like anything else to have a balanced diet in regards to what it is that is depicting us. Yeah, you got people who are like that, but that's an extreme case. That's an outlier. That's not what we're really like. Okay, you look at hip hop of the 80s and the 90s, which was my era. We had diversity at the same time that we had Luther Campbell and the 2 Live crew. Hey, we want some pussy. We had Public Enemy at the same time. Okay, we're gonna have Rakim. I start to think, and then I sink into the paper like I was ink. When I'm writing, I'm trapped in between the lines. I escape. When I finish the rhyme, I got soul. We got Naughty by Nature. We got pop. We got Digital Underground with Humpty Hump. You got, Detective Tutuola, Ice-T. You got Ice Cube. You got NWA. You got Scarface. Okay. It's the lack of the depiction, the comprehensive depiction of who we are as a people that is an error there. But the impact and the effect of that is quite simply that people who see that believe that that is the total summation of what Black life and the Black identity is like. And as I said before, it ain't just outsiders, it ain't just white folk who are digesting and absorbing these images. Black folk are the worst at it. You know, I argue that many of our people are tabula rasa. They're blank slates, as if nothing they've experienced, nothing they've not been socialized in anything. But when they end up seeing something in a movie or whatever, they integrate it into their lives, and it's usually negative. I remember from Boys in the Hood, you had a character there who sucked on a pacifier the
Right.
entire movie. There were brothers in my neighborhood who went and got pacifiers and sucked on pacifiers. You know, there was a brother in my neighborhood who went out and got a 5.0 sitting on Dayton's. Okay, and all summer long, he played one song, "Computer Love." Okay, as if he was, as if he was king. And the thing is that here you have those depictions that are influencing Black folk, and nobody knows who Finding Forrester is. They've never seen that. Okay, which is one of the dopest Black movies that you'll ever see in your life. At the exact same time, look at a person like Lorenz Tate, and ask Black men, who, and Black women too, ask them which character is more iconic, Darius or O-Dog, and they're gonna tell you O-Dog. Man, O-Dog was hard. O-Dog was a sociopath. That's who he was. But you long to identify with that individual versus Darius and Love Jones, a brother who wrote poetry and was a part of a beautiful, rare Black love story that we saw on the big screen. So it's not that it's something wrong with that, because that is a reality for some people, but to send that image and that image out alone to the point where people think that that's all that we are, that's where I find an issue with it at.
Definitely. Do you think that when they pulled him off of him, when they backed him up from putting the gun to Tyrese's head, and he was like, that's OG such and such, OG Merck, is the gang culture set up to teach them to respect their quote unquote OGs in their gang life?
I ain't never been a part of gang culture, so I can't, with any authority talk about that. From listening to people who have been involved in it, like Ice-T and what have you, I think that the gang culture is more of a generational thing.
Okay.
I don't think that there's necessarily a school or socialization of this is this person. They might learn a loose history about it, but in regards to how civilized people communicate, I don't see that happening. It's a different world. It's one of the things that once again, Ice-T, he was talking about Tupac, and he said, I tried to talk to Pac, and I tried to tell him that you have no business around LA gang culture because you don't understand it. He said you have to be reared and raised up in that. And he said, you got a lot of these stars, Chris Brown and these who claim that they're Crips or they're this. He said they're really not. He said these guys are just using them, for access to parties and money and things like that. But the growing up within that community, you're putting in work with your boys who eventually will grow up and mature in the gangs as well. early in your life at 7, 8 years old. So it's a different world from what I understand of how they do things. Because a person like us, we would think that the LA gang wars were Crips against Bloods.
Right.
It's not true.
It's not.
You got Crips killing Crips. You got Bloods killing Bloods. Yeah, it's not what we would think. It's a whole different world. And until you've been immersed in that world, you really don't understand who's who and what's going on. Ice Cube, one of my favorite Ice Cube songs is "My Summer Vacation," where he created this rhyme about South Central LA being saturated with drug dealers. So him and his boys, they took a flight to St. Louis, where nobody knew us, and so they slinging rocks in St. Louis. And Cube has this line in there where he says, these brothers out here dying for a street that they never heard of. So they over there talking about they Hoover Crips, they this, they that. They ain't never met. It's just a name that they heard, and they're trying to replicate that in pretty much the exact same way that many people tried to replicate the Black Panther Party for self-defense after it was created. Well, we're gonna be Panthers. We're gonna create a Panther. Well, you really know nothing about that organization. You see their physical dress. You can put a bandana on. You can put a blue band, but are you really want to? No, you're not. So, the idea of the communicating of ideas of images of values of what a man is. That young boy thought that being a man was pulling a gun out and in many ways going up into a corner store amongst decent civilized people and acting in a uncivilized manner. But let's be fair to them, that when you're talking about American history, America loves its gangsters. People can tell you who Al Capone was. They can tell you who John Gotti was, but they can't tell you who Teddy Roosevelt was. They can't tell you anything about Herbert Hoover. So Americans in general have glorified violence and gangsterism. Keep in mind, that's what Malcolm was talking about when he talked about John F. Kennedy's assassination. I'm a good old country boy. He never made me sad. It's always made me glad when the chickens come home to roost. The violence that happens within this nation has become normalized, yet it remains unconscionable, to the point where when you leave your house, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have or whatever you're fortunate to make it back home alive.
Wow. They say when gangs started that they were for good, for protecting the community and such and such. Did you find that to be true in your studying?
Yeah, that in many ways you gotta remember the history of LA, and especially a place like Oakland. Black folk migrate there for jobs. And anytime Black folk are going to be migrating, anytime anyone's going to be migrating, look at what's happening in Chicago with the Mexican immigrants who are there. They need a place to stay. They're going to need schools to attend. It is in many ways you're integrating these people, and that's going to rub people the wrong way. Historically, it always has. So when you're talking about California, talking about LA in this instance, Compton wasn't always Black. Compton used to be a white neighborhood. Okay, so what's the process of it turning Black? You got a few Black folk who come there, and their children are going to go to school. Well, white folk are going to do what white folk always do, and they're going to get violent because they don't want them there in their neighborhood, taking over their neighborhood. And so the Black folk, and this is what happened with the gangs, the initial formation of the gangs, they're forging out of reasons of protection, of protecting Black folk. But in time, when you have these things forged, number one, after such time, if you have a second or third generation that comes up within these gangs, they don't remember what the initial impetus was. They just see what is right now. It's the exact same thing that happened in Jamestown, where arriving settlers didn't know about the famine and the poverty and the fact that the indigenous populations had saved them. They come over here to get rich, and they attack them because they don't understand what their actions are going to cause. So you're dealing with what I would argue for this nation, I would say any developing nation, any developing region, is a natural trajectory of crime, of violence. We're animals, we're savages. Let's be honest about it. And when you're talking about having Black folk or any population that is economically marginalized, get surrounded by wealth and opulence, and they desire those things, they're going to do anything in the world to get them. Okay, so when heroin, crack cocaine came into the equation, it's predictable that Black folk will begin to kill each other because they're trying to deal with a soul problem by securing monetary resources. And you'll never be able to fill that hole up. It's similar to being hungry, but you go read a book instead of getting something to eat. Things are going to get out of hand.
Doc, are you familiar with Jeff Fort?
Yes, sir. And the El Rukin?
Yes.
Yeah, I know Jeff Fort. Jeff Fort was a contemporary of Fred Hampton and Bobby Rush with the Black Panther Party. He was the head of the Keystone Nation. You know, yeah. Jeff Fort went to prison for allegedly forging a deal with Muammar Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein, where they were given anti-aircraft rocket launchers and were going to shoot down commercial airplanes that left O'Hare. But it turns out that they were actually negotiating with the FBI or CIA. And that's what ultimately led to Jeff Fort being incarcerated. Yeah, I know Jeff Fort very well. Very well.
Wow. Our next program, I want to do a program about him.
Jeff Fort?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's time to delve in him and see what that's all about. And,
yeah, I mean, Jeff Fort, when he went to prison, he was able to. He created a religious group, the El Rukin.
While in prison?
Yeah, and they knew that they were like a criminal enterprise, that he was still running the Keystone Nation, but because of the movement for, you got to remember this is the 1970s, for religious freedom within penitentiaries and prisons, they were on the right side of the law, court judgments, and so they were able to meet and things like that. Yeah.
Wow. And what was the religious group called again?
The El Rukin. I think they were called the El Rukin. RUKHEN, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll chop it up on the next program. But I definitely.
Yeah. Now I know more about Hampton than I do the Fort. Fort was he was something.
Now, him and Hampton was around the same time together, or no?
The exact same time. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember. The Keystone Nation predates the Panthers, so the Panthers are kind of the Johnny-come-latelys, and Fort and Hampton get into it, and they're having a public spat, and I don't remember which one issued the order first, but one of them told the other, "Yo, you got like 48 hours to shut down your group and merge it with the I think it was Fort, that you know, to merge it with the Keystone Nation." And Hampton retorted, "Yeah, you got the exact same time to do the same thing." And they had this meeting, and Minister Farrakhan was involved in this with Jeff Ford in a loose way, in a different story. But Ford wanted to have a meeting with Fred Hampton, and Hampton writes about this meeting that it was at a hotel that had a spiral staircase. And he said, as the Panthers are going up, and he said they got like maybe 30, 40 members. As they're going up, every step of that up the way of that spiral staircase had a member of the Keystone Nation holding a machine gun. Okay, and he makes it up there to meet with Ford. They have a meeting, and Ford said, you know, I know you brothers are out here trying to, you know, to fight the law and things like that. He said, so we want to give you a gift. And Fred Hampton said they gifted us like 10 automatic machine guns.
Wow.
Okay. And Fred Hampton, he said they took the weapons, but it impressed upon him, if I can give you this, what you think I got?
Wow.
Yeah. And Fred Hampton and Mr. Farrakhan had a conflict as well. Where, yeah, you got to remember they're both in Chicago, and Minister Farrakhan gave a sermon, and he said he's talking about the Panthers, and he says, "Yeah, you're around here calling the police pigs, but I've always been taught that you are what you eat." Okay, talking about the Panthers eating pork,
right?
So Fred Hampton, the Panthers had a meeting with Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam brothers, and Hampton says to Mr. Farrakhan, he says, "Okay, I heard what you said." He said, "So I got a question for you." And Mr. Farrakhan said, "Go right ahead, my brother, with your question." He said, "You are a man, correct?" And he said, "Yes, brother, I'm all man. I'm a man." He said, "So I take for granted that you eat men." And Mr. Farrakhan just bust out laughing and said, "Brother, I get your point. I get the point that you're making." Okay. He said, "Please don't call us pigs." No. So yeah, you got there. I actually have a student who at one point of being under me, he started writing a movie titled like The Three Kings or something, and it was about Hampton, Ford, Mr. Farrakhan, with the nation being there, and the FBI with J. Edgar Hoover, and how they came in and killed Fred Hampton. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, and those Chicago.
Wow.
Had a very interesting. It's a very interesting history of the activist scene in Chicago. And how could it not be when you got the headquarters of the Nation of Islam there, you got the Keystone Nation there that's bigger than the nation and the Panthers put together.
Wow.
Keystone Nation, and the irony. You talk about an irony. Fred Hampton opposed Jeff Ford, who was the head of the Keystone Nation, right? Fred Hampton Jr. becomes at one point of his life the head of the Keystone Nation.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, all of these intersections and connections and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good program.
Yeah, let's talk about the four of them. J. Edgar Hoover, Hampton, Fort, and the Minister. And what was going on in Chicago? You know, because you have to remember that Chicago never had a infestation of, I want to say it was heroin, because the Keystone Nation, Jeff Fort them was like, no, y'all not gonna have our people up here as junkies.
Wow. Wow, that's all right.
Yeah, I mean it's you know it's no different than what you saw with in New York City with Bumpy Johnson. You know, that, these quote unquote the people that white folk are labeling as gangsters within Black America. Let Big Mama die, and she didn't have no insurance. Where you gonna get the money to bury her? You got to go to one of these quote unquote gangsters. And these individuals that you're talking about are gangsters. Hell, Jeff Fort grew up in some elementary, middle, and high school. You know, so he's got some friends. You know, in that. You know, it's just what hell. Michael Jordan. You know, you have people that Michael Jordan grew up with. Everybody grew up with somebody. You know, and that determines that relationship and what an outside force, especially a white force, that disdains and disapproves of everything Black and powerful. Well, yeah, they're gonna, it's not accidental that Ford ended up in prison. Fred Hampton Jr. ended up murdered.
Good Lord. When they killed Fred, did Jeff do anything? Did he?
Yeah, they expressed their significant condolences and things like that. And there, you always have these loose stories of some physical retribution. You know, when you have to think that the brother who, and when I interviewed people from Chicago when I was doing my dissertation on the Panthers, I got several different stories, but the gentleman who basically ratted out Fred Hampton and told them, you know, when to come in. He was the head of Panther security, William Gloves O'Neill. O'Neill was working with the FBI. He was working with the feds. Okay, well, his story comes out in the Eyes on the Prize series. They have an episode titled "A Nation of Law," where they're talking about the setting up and the assassination of Chairman Fred Hampton and also the Attica prison uprising. But when they're talking about Hampton, it's William Gloves O'Neill, who's literally there on camera, and he talks about how he became an FBI informant. Okay, and they had the documents, the FBI memorandums showing how much he was paid. He was paid like $200 for unique service, you know, and that directly led to the murder of Fred Hampton. Well, Eyes on the Prize comes out that night. That episode of it comes out because it was on PBS. The most repeated story that I got was that somebody pushed O'Neill in front of a city bus and it ran his ass over and killed him. A couple of people said, well, he dove in front, he committed suicide. But the most common story I heard was that some Black folk pushed his ass in front of a city bus for being so instrumental and central to Fred Hampton being murdered. So you talk about retribution. There you go.
Wow. So they did the right thing then.
I mean, you know, karma. You know, and the founder of the Chicago branch of the Black Panther Party is a man who did something that nobody in history had ever repeated politically. He defeated Barack Hussein Obama in an election. Bobby Rush. Yeah, he couldn't. He came to Chicago, tried to run against Bobby Rush. He couldn't beat Bobby Rush. Bobby Rush take pride in that. Like, you didn't. Yep.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna go ahead and go to closing comments. What's your closing comments, Doc? And add in your closing comments what you would like to see coming out of Black men in the next 3 to 5 years. What is it that you would like to see?
You know, first off, glad to be here. You know, we miss each other on Fridays. We have to work. We're working men, and it's just what it is. So this Saturday works out well. But just happy to be here with everybody. That would be my only closing comment. What would I like to see from Black men in 3 to 5 years? A total reset. If we could hit a reset button and focus upon organization and focus upon creating a 5-year plan that we can execute individually and collectively. I think that those of us who are doing well, we need to adhere to a principle of socially responsible individualism. Nobody's telling you to not go get yours, not go get your bag and what have you, but be socially responsible and aware while you're doing that to help others. And for brothers who are striving to get their lives together, get something going and what have you, be open and willing to and courageous enough, tuck away your pride, ask for help, okay, ask for mentoring, ask for structure, ask people how, you know, what is it that you did to get to where you are, not just what you did to make money, but what is it that you've done? What are your life principles? And I'm not talking about the 48 powers of law. I ain't talking about any of that. What did you do to make it happen? One of my best former students, Bradford Traywood, he wanted to know how I could write the way I write. And I told him, I said, yo, bro, I'm up at 4 a.m. every morning. I write every single morning. You know, and it's we need to allow each other to see behind the curtain of what it is, what our formula for success is, number one. And number two, love each other and love Black women and love Black children. And if there's any gaps that are there, fill them in with good thoughts and good things and good deeds. And yet at the exact same time, understand that everybody ain't for you. And if you come across somebody that ain't for you, keep it moving. You don't have to waste no time there arguing with nobody and trying to convince them of what is what. You know, move in love, move in peace, but move in strength and honor. And I yield, brother.
Definitely. Thank you, Doc. Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. And as we always say, you kill the nigga in you, I'm going to kill the nigga in me, and our God will reign supreme. We are Black first, today, tomorrow, and forever. Thank you, family. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
You better get the message and get it straight. You're going to need some bridge work. It's simple as that. Because we're living in judgment. We're living in implementation.